Greetings and welcome to the 90-Minute Film School. My name is Anna Fetter. I'm a curator and educator, and most recently, a documentary filmmaker. I've had the pleasure of speaking in this session since 2017, and I've been producing this session since 2019. It's hard to decide what topics to fit into a 90-minute session that's supposed to be an introduction to filmmaking. I try to include somebody speaking about fundraising, someone else talking about production, and then of course, distribution and exhibition, because it's important to figure out how your film is going to get in front of an audience. And that's sort of the film ecosystem that we're all sort of living in. And I hope that you find this valuable. And also, I wanted to let you know that we are hosting a live conversation with all of the folks that you've seen here on Monday, March 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And they'll find more information at the end of the session, including a link for where to register. So mark your calendars, and I hope to see you all there. Enjoy the session.
Hi friends, I'm Emily Best, founder and CEO of Seed and Spark. And to kick off your 90-minute film school, I'm going to give you a really abridged version of a workshop we teach all over the world called Crowdfunding to Build Independence. Why do we call it this? Well, something that I think is kind of a fallacy in calling ourselves independent creators or independent filmmakers is that the construct we've been taught is you do all the work to raise the money, make the thing, and then you wait for a sales agent to pick you, or you wait for a festival to pick you, you wait for a distributor to pick you, you wait for the publisher to pick you. And that's not independent. Independence really comes from being able to control the entire end-to-end process from when you create to when it gets delivered to an audience. And the more control you have along there, well, the more independent you really are. In order to really have independence, you need data. You need to know your audience and you need to know how to find them. You need to understand kind of how they behave and where you can reach them. And that will allow you to capitalize on the best marketing channels. It will allow you to increase the value of your intellectual property. If you know you can deliver and sell something to an audience before even you make it, because you've already been building a relationship with that audience, when you go to sell it, you sell it with the value of the audience relationship that you've built. And then when it comes time to negotiate the bits and bobs, if you're the one that really knows the audience and knows how to deliver it, then you get to retain much more creative control. And these are the things that crowdfunding can give to you. Does this sound like stuff that maybe as a creator you're not supposed to be bothered with? Well, here's the thing. We have a compromise, right? You can either sort of be high up on the mountain and create things and then hand them off and hope that the person you're handing them off to takes really good care of them. Or you can be involved in every process and really ensure that everything you make is being treated with the care with which you made it. A lot of us out there are trying to make things that haven't been seen before. We're trying to make movies that tell different stories. We're trying to make comic books that feature different characters. And the truth is, if you're making those things that have never been made before, then there's no distributor that has experience in delivering it to those audiences. There's no publisher that knows better than delivering it to those audiences. But if you as the creator learn how to talk to your audience and how to build a relationship with them, you will have to teach that distributor and that publisher that you eventually partner with how to speak to that audience, because you'll both be doing it really for the first time. If you hear my children in the background, that's the sound of what having it all sounds like. Here's the thing. What happens with most crowdfunding is people launch their campaigns and they expect this magic to happen, right? That all of a sudden, this crowd out there that just has dollars, they're desperate to spend on things, comes running to you. And what happens when you launch a campaign without a ton of preparation is you end up doing friend funding. And all of us have done it at one point or another. We're guilty of it. But that can be a really limited resource. If you're like me and your friends are mostly broke artists, friend funding is really limited. What we really want to help you do is learn how to crowdfund, right? And there's a reason that in this compound word, the word crowd comes before the word funding. You actually have to build the crowd before you can ask them for money. So that's really what we're going to concentrate on mostly today, is how to really get that crowd and that momentum that you need to build a great crowdfunding campaign. And I think something that people don't realize is that crowdfunding you crowdfund on a platform, just like you crowdfund or you post on Instagram, which is a platform, or you post on Facebook, which is a platform. These are all just storytelling mediums, right? Crowdfunding is the story of how and why your project will get made. And that's something that you're involving people in to get them excited to give you their money and their time and their energy and their attention in advance of the thing really happening. So where do you start building this crowd? You're going to ask yourself 3 very simple questions. Who the hell is your audience? Where the hell are they? And how the hell do you get their email addresses? Why are email addresses so important? Well, everybody thinks that social media is like an end unto itself, where you really have to go after the largest possible social media following to be successful in a lot of these crowdfunding and audience building efforts. And while it's true that social media can be an accelerant, and I'll talk more about that in a second, the fact is that email lists convert at a 10 to 100x higher rate than a social media following to actually taking actions as your audience, buying what you're streaming or funding your crowdfunding campaign. And the process of figuring out where your audience is, how to reach them, and then how to breadcrumb them into an email list where they have a deeper connection to you, that's going to serve you much better than just building a social media following willy-nilly. What often happens when we ask the question, who the hell is your audience, is folks will get really general, right? And they'll start to quote a demographic. My audience is women between the ages of 24 and 35. And the problem is, that's not very specific because, for example, these 3 women are between the ages of 24 and 35. And my guess is they're not frequenting all the same news sources and social media platforms. They're not following the same influencers. They're probably not watching all of the same movies. Which one of these women is a LinkedIn power user, right? And which ones maybe are not. And it's okay to try to make some assumptions around your audience at first. However, demographic assumptions will always be wrong, right? You never know what about a story is really going to appeal to someone. So we really want you to get focused on what is the unique story you're telling and the reason that you're telling it, and starting to actually reach out to those audience members and understanding where they might come from and how they might talk to each other. You have to find out how to enter the communities your audience is in. So you have to go find out what communities are they in to figure out what's the right thing to say about your project and where and when do you say it. And then you want to find out who can help you amplify your message. Are there organizations, nonprofits, brands that speak really well to the audience that you think you're speaking to? Are there influencers or journalists or somebody with a blue check mark on Twitter that cares about what you're doing? You really want to spend some time doing the research to figure out how you can amplify your message. I want to give you an example. So a lot of people treat social media as a self-promotion platform. And Distance, the web series, was created by Alex DeBrinco, is a great example of using social media to really enter the community that your audience is in and give them something valuable that then turned into an amazing promotional vector for the series. So Alex crowdfunded the series, and while he was crowdfunding, it's a series about a long distance relationship based on the true story of Alex and his now wife, Lauren. And it's an absolutely delightful comedy. Each episode is actually shot twice, one from the boyfriend's perspective and one from the girlfriend's perspective. And that obviously adds to the comedic hijinks. One of the things he did during his crowdfunding campaign that was really successful was he had real life long distance couples post tips on how to keep a long distance relationship fun and alive. And that was really popular during his crowdfunding campaign. So when he went into production and he was still trying to build an audience, he really wanted to find ways to reach folks. And I think I think even advice I have given as recently as like 4 or 5 years ago was, yeah, post stuff from behind the scenes, like give your audience a window into what you're doing. And the truth is, like, most audience members for things like, unless you're on the set of Star Wars, they don't really care about the behind the scenes. So what Alex did instead is he did a bunch of research to find out, well, where do couples in long distance relationships hang out online? And it turned out hashtag LDR on Twitter or on Instagram was a huge community of long distance couples posting memes and photos about when they pick each other up from the airport or when they drop each other off at the airport. And Alex created this really wonderful resource and place for people in long distance relationships to feel seen, such that, and it went from, you know, when he was posting BTS from the distance, he would get maybe 20 likes from those of us who already know him. And then when he switched to making his social media a space for his audience, it became a place that would get hundreds of comments sometimes on a single post. He was really engaging his audience. It was teaching him things about how to talk to the audience who was going to feel the most seen by his series, such that when it launched at South by Southwest a couple years ago, it took off. It got nominated for a Gotham Award, and you'll see that the only self-promotional post in this entire segment that you can see on your screen is the one to say that the distance was in the Gotham Awards. This really was a space for his audience to hang out together. It wasn't a space of just self-promotion about the project, and that works really well. So before you think about launching a campaign, you've got to know who and where your audience is, how to use social media if you plan to use it. It's okay if you don't, then you build mailing lists and you partner with organizations that have mailing lists. There are lots of other ways to reach audiences. We were able to reach audiences before there was social media. You run a test and figure out how to onboard potential partners who can help you amplify your message. And you really want to spend some time talking to your actual audience. And then you can think about asking them for things. And if you think I'm moving really quickly through stuff, I absolutely am. The good news is there are tons of blogs and resources, and also a deeper dive on Seed and Spark's website if you would like it. It's all the resources are absolutely free to go deeper on every single one of these topics. The reason that is most important to build your audience in advance of launching your campaign is that you never want to launch a campaign and then start to build momentum. In fact, you should launch your campaign at the crest of the wave, right? So you're spending a bunch of time talking to your audience, getting them excited, drawing them into your mailing list. Boy, the kids are really after it today. And you launch your campaign just at the moment when really your audiences are like, just let us see it already, right? And that's when you really start to get them involved. The statistics around crowdfunding campaigns are campaigns that reach 30% of their goal inside the first week have something like a 90% campaign success rate. So that takes momentum from before you start to make sure you hit those targets. Don't have toddlers in the pandemic is my solemn recommendation. A common question that we get asked is how much can I get in a crowdfunding campaign? This is like fundamentally kind of a flawed thesis. It's really about how much do you need and what are you offering to audiences to get them involved? Build a real budget. And if that number seems like, oh my God, that's an insurmountable crowdfunding goal, break it up into stages. But make sure you are always asking your audience, or you're telling your audience that you're raising enough money to deliver on the promises in your pitch. So if it's going to cost you $60,000 to get your short all the way through festivals and onto a distribution strategy, but that feels like too much, scale it back. Raise $10,000 for development and pre-production. Do everything you promise and then launch a new campaign for production. We've seen multiple campaigns throughout the years have tremendous success through staged financing. Incentives. This is every single campaign has some incentives. It's why are people getting involved? Something that I like to tell people is that if you know your audience, you can just go out and ask them, hey, what would be really exciting to you to have? But generally speaking, T-shirts about an independent drama or a poster or a signed version of the script. I hate to say it, guys, but almost nobody wants those. There are exceptions, right? But especially if you're a visual artist, please think about what you can deliver that feels personalized and exciting, that doesn't require manufacturing. Like, we don't need to proliferate more stuff. If you and your team have skills to offer, if you can use an incentive to draw people into the story, this is one of my favorites. There was a short drama about time travel, but Sean Mannion, the creator, offered to transport you as his supporter to anywhere in time you wanted to go. So Christina Rea, former Seed and Spark employee, now full-time filmmaker, is here hanging out with Amelia Earhart. These were delightful for the folks that followed Sean's campaign. And we all shared them everywhere. And so it created a lot of momentum around his campaign. And it made us trust him as an artist. Was it exactly in line with his film? No, not necessarily, but it created a lot of delight for us to interact with him as an artist. It built a lot of momentum for his campaign. So think about stuff that you don't have to manufacture, or if you do, make sure that it is set at an incentive level that's appropriate. I will figure out how to make this slide deck available to you all so you can review it, and you can also always download it on the education section of Seed and Spark. The pitch video has to be good, y'all. If you're making a pitch video for a film, then basically you're making a tiny film to tell people why they should give you money to make a longer film. You have to appear in it. You have to show people that you have some filmmaking aptitude, and you have to keep it tight. Keep it under 2 minutes if you can. I don't know what happens. Sometimes filmmakers get sort of frozen in pitch video mode and they have to go into direct address. And it probably feels roughly as awkward as it feels for me to be teaching this class alone in this room while my children scream in the hallway. However, you have to figure out a way to convey to your audience in the pitch video what they're going to get. So if it's a comedy, it's got to be funny. If it's a drama, show us you can pull our heartstrings. If it's a horror movie, give us 10 to 15 seconds at the top that show us that you can make our hair stand up. And you can do this as cheaply as possible. You can use fair use footage. There's tons of creative ways to do this. And there are lots of amazing examples of brilliant crowdfunding videos out there. You have to be in it. You have to show that you can make the thing in the tone that you're saying, and you have to make a real, clear, concise ask of your audience. Why do they need to get involved? What are you offering them that the world would be worse without, that will make them at the end of the video be like, oh my God, take my money? All of this is a lot of work. Please don't do it alone. Build enough of your team in advance of this and get them all really pumped to know that every time you build audience for a project, it benefits everyone involved, and make sure you're dividing and conquering the work. The pre-production of your campaign is potentially the most important part. Create a schedule where you know what and when you are communicating across all of your audience channels. If you're doing social, if you're doing email, if you're blasting out to partner organizations, make sure you have that planned out for before your campaign, during your campaign, and after your campaign so you don't ghost your supporters. And make sure to leave room for new elements. The world marches on while your crowdfunding campaign's happening, and it's cool if you can react to it in real time. And then also plan to learn from your crowd. So go back and review your messaging on a regular basis. Get rid of the stuff that nobody cares about. Do more of what they really seem to be interacting with. So the checklist is making sure during your campaign that you have a daily practice of sending thank yous, because gratitude is really, really important to success. You want to have weekly or bi-weekly updates to show momentum and get your current supporters excited and ready to share. You want to have a process for reviewing messaging and being able to make adjustments. And then remember, you're just using your incentives, your pitch video, your updates to tell your audience a story of how and why this movie is going to get made. Thank you so much. There's so much more information on seedandspark.com. And if you have any direct questions, you can email us at crowdfunding@seedandspark.com. Happy South by Southwest.
Hello, my name is Sav Rogers. I am a documentary filmmaker, and I'm really excited to be here today to be on the 90-minute film school panel at South by Southwest, talking about getting into making a personal documentary and what that means and the kind of investment that is not only in your movie, but in yourself. So I'm here to speak from my own experience. I obviously cannot speak for you or your experience. And because I'm just talking at you, there's no way for me to specifically cater this to any individual watching. So I'm just going to do my best to talk from my own experience. Please take what is valuable and apply it to your own life, projects, etc. And I hope that me talking about my own experience and my own point of view on things can be valuable for you. So let's get started. So who am I? I would also like to know. No, but in terms of my credibility for being here talking to you today, I am a narrative and documentary filmmaker. I run a production company called Professional Amateur Productions. The main thing we've been doing is this documentary, but we've made a lot of shorts over the years. I'm also the founder and executive director of the Transgender Film Center. So I implore any trans filmmakers who are watching, please apply for some of our money and go through some of our initiatives and programs. We're continuing to evolve. We launched in November 2020, and we're continuing to grow our programming in hopes to serve folks like you. And so please check out our website and everything. I've also worked on the film programming side at Slamdance, Outfest, and the Victoria Independent Film Festival, basically just helping choose films. Sometimes my voice has mattered more than others, but it's been a really good experience, not only as a programmer, but also as a filmmaker, to learn more about the process and just receiving other people's work. It's been super valuable for me. I'm also on the board for Film Society KC, and I'm board president of the Transgender Film Center. I also serve on the advisory council for Vidiots, which is an incredible organization based out of LA. Please check out their work. Really amazing people. Aside from my work as a filmmaker, I am also a husband, a pug dad, and I love video games and storytelling in all forms. I've just, become a big reader here since the pandemic started, and I just love storytelling in any form. But I'm also a person behind filmmaking, so hopefully that is valuable. And of course, my pronouns are he, him, and his. Hopefully that's all useful information for you, and so you can see where I'm coming from and what my experience has been like as I'm, talking about my experiences. So, and for my beginnings, I really like to inform people like where I come from, because I think that really informs what it is I have to say, and it informs my point of view, so you can understand where I'm coming from. So I grew up in Olathe, Kansas, which is a perfectly fine suburb in Kansas City, on the Kansas side of Kansas City. It led me to dream like really big because I never felt like anything particularly interesting was happening around me. And because I had kind of trouble making friends because I was a super awkward kid. I mean, it's not to say I never had friends, but I definitely struggled socially. So film and television was a huge source of comfort for me and allowed me to dream as big as I wanted. So I spent a lot of time as a kid watching like weird cult movies, but also like Full House and Ben Affleck movies, which so my taste was definitely questionable to some people, but I like to call it eclectic. And I feel like I learned a lot from those very formative TV and film experiences. I was really closeted as a kid too, so I'm a queer trans dude from Kansas. It was definitely not cool when I was growing up. It's definitely not safe for a lot of queer and trans people now. However, I had teachers who would openly say horrible things about queer and trans people. Classmates were not overly kind about it. I mean, obviously they're that's not indicative of a whole class, but all of that really like led to a lot of internalized like homophobia and transphobia, and so I stayed in the closet for a very long time. And so, but at age 12, I found this movie called Chasing Amy, directed by Kevin Smith. It had a screening at South by back in '97, actually. And I loved this movie. I was going through my big Ben Affleck watching phase. I saw Ben Affleck's face on the box and I was like, Mom, can I please watch this movie, please? And it really informed a lot about the kinds of movies that I liked, but also it introduced me to this idea that you could be a filmmaker. It didn't connect immediately, but I was like, wow, this is incredible. I love this. And then it also really helped me feel better about my sexuality. And eventually, the process of loving Chasing Amy so much helped me come out as trans. And we'll get into that later. But I can't underscore how important this movie was for me as a kid growing up. So just keep that in mind as we move forward. So I wanted to become a filmmaker after seeing Chasing Amy. I learned what a showrunner was thanks to Ryan Murphy and his visibility, and now that's my career aspiration. I make independent films right now, but I'd love to get paid to write and direct them full time. Documentaries, narrative, and then of course, being a showrunner for scripted television. Um, Being from Kansas, I wanted to go to an in-state college so that the financial burden wouldn't be too heavy. So I went to KU in 2013. Great school. Basketball was invented there. Go Jayhawks! And I had the privilege of being taught by some incredible mentors, including Kevin Wilmot, Matt Jacobson, and Laura Kirk. But my first year at film school was a total bust because I had no idea like what like how do you start making a movie? I had no idea. I didn't know what lights were like, and I just figured you turn on the camera, right? I get my first camera at 12 and I think, oh, that's really gonna help like make a movie. And then I would shoot through it and I was like, why doesn't this look like a Hollywood movie? I didn't know what I didn't know. But going to film school was hugely helpful, just in that it really taught me about the independent filmmaking spirit, and that if you want to get something done, you really have to get it done. And so that was another big life lesson for me in terms of what my work ethic would become. So after film school, I looked at my body of work. I had made a bunch of short films, and I started really thinking about, well, I'm looking at this and I tried different things, but none of it really reflects what I have to say as a filmmaker. And that was very disappointing to me because I had these big aspirations. I dreamed super big. And so I had to really start interrogating myself and think, okay, so like, what do you want to be doing? And so I was in an artist residency in Kansas City, and I took the fellowship and residency path after college, while also doing freelance work. And I started to really interrogate, well, what is your point of view, Sav? What do you actually want to be doing? And once I figured out what I kind of thought my voice was, which is very extremely specific stories that you can make universal by virtue of building out like something that's relatable to people, not just in like the micro level of your story, but on the macro level of like, oh, everybody feels this, right? Writing scripts that maybe you're extremely specific, but anybody can relate to the feeling of like wanting to be loved, right? Or having this common goal. And so having that really specific voice, I figured out, was something that I really aspired to as a filmmaker because it's what I respected in other filmmakers. And that was hugely important moving forward. So again, so how I developed my voice, watching movies, movies that were far better than anything I had ever written, really focusing on like what made these movies great and really interrogating that. Doing fellowships where I would be around other really brilliant artists whose work I admired. And then, of course, mentorship. Mentorship has always been really key for me. And then once I could honestly really be honest with myself about sexuality and gender identity wouldn't come until later, but that was tremendously helpful because once you know yourself better, it really helps inform like the honesty behind your work. So highly recommend, if you need to go to therapy, go to therapy. The more that you can be self-reflexive and honest with yourself about who you are, I think the better your work becomes. That's just my experience, but it's also really helpful for doing a personal documentary. And when we talk about personal, I'm talking about it literally, where it's like you are very involved on screen in the process and you're telling like your story. But personal can mean different things to different people. But I do think that being honest with yourself is helpful regardless of what your definition of personal documentary is. So the movie I always wanted to make, it's when I started really interrogating what my voice was, I realized I was like, my relationship with Chasing Amy is really specific. And, trigger warning, I'm going to talk about something that's really, a bummer, but, feeling so isolated as a kid, and feeling so much shame and internalized homophobia and transphobia about my identity, really led to some dark times for, little Sav, right? And chasing Amy was something that saved my life literally, because I began to have suicidal ideations about it. And it's it is what it is. Um, and it's unfortunate that I was at that point, but I was really grateful to have a movie that, in my opinion, really validated LGBTQ identity when I didn't really feel like I had that in many other places. And so I was very grateful to the movie. But I also knew that Chasing Amy had a really controversial reputation among other people, and I really wanted to navigate, okay, like, what is it about this movie that's so divisive? And so I just set out and I wanted to tell a story about the controversial nature of Chasing Amy, and how it pertained to LGBTQ identity. And it wasn't until I started pitching it to friends and family where they're like, your story is the thing that's really interesting about this. Your relationship with this movie and what it unleashed in you. It helped you become a filmmaker. It's helped you navigate your life. And you have such a strong attachment to this movie in such a specific way. We think there's something there. And being, camera shy, of course, I was like, yeah, maybe I'll be in it a little bit. And then it kind of just turned into this other thing where other people were like, you need to be in this movie. You're like the main character, which, as a filmmaker, it's like, oh, that's a good idea if that's the best version of the movie. But as a person, is very daunting, especially because I've been so camera and like body shy my whole life. Because, on the outside, I had never matched what I looked like in my head, right? I was still closeted as trans at this time. I hadn't come out as a transgender man. And so it was very daunting to be willing to put myself on camera in any means, but I thought the story was more important than any reservations I had. And so that's kind of where we start. Is Chasing Amy is intended to be like a cultural, anthropological exploration of what Chasing Amy is to queer people only. And then my story is kind of the catalyst. And then it evolves into this thing of like, wow, I'm on camera way more than I ever wanted to be. So I gave a TED talk about this. And, people always ask me, like, how did you give a TED talk? How did you get this opportunity? And I worked really hard. Like, that can't be like overstated enough, that I worked my tail off to get in a position where I could get lucky for somebody to choose me. As an independent filmmaker, we don't often wait for people to choose us. We kind of have to create our own opportunities. I was really prepared, though, to talk at length about Chasing Amy, though, and its impact on my life, because I had been preparing it for years. I had written about it in college papers. I had written about it for the Blacklist. And it was just really important to me to be able to share this part of myself. So that's how I ended up giving a TED talk. So basically, while I'm in this artist residency, I find a Facebook ad that is tailored directly to me because TED has a residency at this time. And it's the best Facebook targeted ad that I've ever received. But I saw it and I was like, wow, that's interesting. And Adobe had a spot that was basically sponsored by Adobe in the TED residency to pay for a young person to go join the residency because, they weren't getting enough like applications by like younger folks, right? And so Adobe was sponsoring the spot. And I applied the day of the deadline on a whim, pitching a very vague TED talk about queer representation in media and its importance, because it had literally saved my life. And months later, to my surprise, I became like a finalist for it. And like, I still laugh about it because they were like, okay, well, we really like you, but your pitch is very vague. So like, if you had to give a TED talk tomorrow, what would it be about? And I told them about my relationship with Chasing Amy. And I think the thing they said was, that is the most specific and narrow pitch for a TED talk we've ever heard. And then 3 days later, I heard that I got it, and I got to go to New York, and Adobe like paid for me to go to New York, which, again, lucky. But it was transformational for my own life because I'd never lived outside of Kansas before then. I got to go hang out in New York for 3 months and like, play in the big leagues for a bit. And I worked in TED HQ every day, developing this documentary, building relationships, and working on my TED talk. And the TED Talk is, a 6-minute or 8-minute version. It was supposed to be 6 minutes, but I was the last one to go, so they didn't really care about the time. But so it's an 8-minute TED Talk about how important Chasing Amy is to me as a film and how it saved my life. And huge. It was absolutely huge for me. And I really designed that TED Talk for an audience of one, which was to try to reach Kevin Smith, because I thought, well, this is the greatest pitch video in history. It's much better than me trying to just email his reps and say, oh, this movie meant a lot to me. By having a whole TED Talk dedicated to what this movie meant to me, I was really hoping to immediately build a connection with him. And the lesson out of this whole story of like how I got the TED Talk is that I was able to communicate my story in a very specific way that stood out, and gave me credibility in the process, which was invaluable. And so I would say to, and this isn't, I'm not the only person who's ever done this. If you look at Lulu Wang, she was on This American Life, talking about the story that would eventually become The Farewell. And it was a great way for people to get really excited about her project. And so if you can find ways to tell your story in a way that really stands out, that other people are loaning you their credibility to help you tell your story in that way, I have personally found it's very effective. It worked for Lulu Wang. So if you can think of like innovative ways to get your story out there and to get people kind of like hooked, it's a lot easier to then sell your very personal story that people might think is too niche, and say, hey, look, this is something that's really great that other people are interested in. And so that's kind of the story from there. And I love this quote by Kevin Smith. Remember, it costs nothing to encourage an artist, and the potential benefits are staggering. A pat on the back to an artist now could one day result in your favorite film, or the cartoon you love watching, or the song that saves your life. And I just want to rest on that for a second, because when I read that quote, I was like, wow, I think this guy gets it. And it turned out that he really did, because in less than 1 hour of my TED Talk coming out, Kevin tweeted it and was basically like, hey, what help do you need to like get in touch with people for this documentary? And after that, like Brie Larson shared it, and Ben Affleck shared it, and Joey Lauren Adams shared it, and Monica Lewinsky shared it. And Kevin again loaned his credibility to me to say, wow, this is like a really touching TED Talk. And Kevin's investment in me went a tremendously long way to getting us credibility for the documentary. And I will say he's a very kind man, and I hope that this year at South by that you watch Clerk by Malcolm Ingram, that really explores Kevin's life. Our documentary is very different from it, but I hope you watch it this year. So the personal narrative of the film also shifted when I met Kevin, which was kind of crazy to me, because I didn't think it could get more surreal than that. So why this story? Why spend all this time making this personal documentary that may be too niche, right, to a lot of people? Well, I mean, because I'm the only person that could tell this story in this specific way, which lines up with my goals for telling stories with a specific point of view. And the whole thing happened like surprisingly naturally. There aren't really any like forced parts of this movie, because everything is kind of this weird reimagining of the American dream, except it's accessible to a queer trans guy now who wants to make movies like his eventual mentor. And that it's a surprising narrative to me as well. But I mean, when you tell a personal story, there are potential pitfalls like, the exposure, right? You have to put yourself out there in a really uncomfortable way a lot of the time. You have to be a character instead of like a person sometimes. It can be difficult to really look at yourself as a character and have to critique yourself as a character. When I get rough cuts back, I'm like, I wouldn't like me if I saw this version of it. Like, we have to make sure that everything's kind of flowing in this coherent way where any sentimentality is really earned, because it is a very sentimental movie, and I hope a very funny, fun, personal documentary. And so you also have to think about who cares. Knowing your audience is essential to finding some kind of success with your doc. So you have to think about who cares about this? Why does anybody but me care about it? And really consider that as you're building a personal documentary. I think there are other great examples of personal documentaries from the last few years, like The Amazing Jonathan, Minding the Gap. Just take a look at those movies and how they're able to craft those narratives. And hopefully when Chasing Amy comes out, you can also find that. And this is what helped me become more confident in my filmmaking process throughout making Chasing Amy. And I still have to commit to it because we're in post-production right now. So commit to being a lifelong learner. You don't know what you don't know, but if you are really striving to know as much as you can and learn as much as you can, the process becomes a lot easier because you're less shocked when things don't immediately work out. And it also makes you better at your craft. For me, balancing setting huge goals while also being practical is a very like razor's edge like line to walk. I have big aspirations for what I hope this movie does, but I also have to be practical about, okay, what if this doesn't work out? What are your plans A through Z or B through Z to make sure that this can actually happen? Surround yourself with people who are more knowledgeable than you and work with people who understand the business side of filmmaking and learn from them. Be open to new experiences and directions for your doc, and then commit to being as honest with yourself as possible, because you're putting yourself out there in a major way. So if you can be really honest with yourself, that's going to be huge. Throughout the process of doing Chasing Amy, I came out as a transgender man. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, was to have to be honest with myself in that way, because I thought it was too late and I wasn't sure if people would accept me or not. And while I didn't lose a friend in the process, I did lose a lot of shame about that through this, and I feel very proud about that. So if you could commit to yourself that you're going to be honest for the sake of yourself, I think the story of your personal documentary will flow much better. And through the process of having to try to honor the story, I've also had to honor myself. And it's been a very strange experience. And I hope that some of this has been very helpful for you in terms of like taking the knowledge that I've just told you and applying it to your own documentary. And if you want to connect, here I am on the socials. This is me. And these are the handles for Chasing Amy. Here's my website. And if you want to take advantage of the Transgender Film Center resources, I sincerely hope that you've had a good time watching this. And thank you so much for taking the time to hear what I have to say. And if there's anything that I can ever do to be of service to you, the viewer, please let me know. I've got plenty of stories that don't fit into this 18-minute talk. And I sincerely thank you for your time and for listening. All right. Thank you. And enjoy the rest of South by Southwest 2021.
Hello, I am Naomi McDougall-Jones, and today I'm going to be talking to you about audience building. My assigned topic for this was actually distribution, but the reality is that we are in the middle of a mass sea change and upheaval in terms of distribution in the film industry right now. Partly because of COVID, although partly mostly to do with things that were happening before COVID, which would be its whole own lecture, but basically Netflix and the other streaming services have destroyed revenue models for the entire industry because they've trained audiences now to expect great and unlimited content for free, or what feels like free because the $12.99 is just coming off their credit card every month, which is great in a way for audiences, although fundamentally unsustainable from a money perspective because you can't pay for unlimited content for free for $12.99 a month, no matter how many people are subscribing. So that accelerated by COVID and by the close down of COVID means that everything is a complete mess right now with respect to distribution. Distribution companies are popping in and out of existence like popcorn. The biggest distribution companies today may not even exist in 2 to 3 years when your movie comes out. So it's less useful to talk to you about distribution than it is about audience building, because the bad news is that we have no idea what's happening and nobody really does, if they're being honest with you. The good news is that whatever else is happening, the one thing that you have control over is whether or not you've built an audience. Because if you've spent the time to build an audience for your film, it actually doesn't matter what the distribution model is at the time that your film comes out, because you can just take those people and plug them into it. And I think audience building, people think associated a lot with DIY distribution or filmmaking, like, well, I only have to worry about building an audience if I'm going to self-distribute, and that's just not true anymore. Distribution companies are constantly struggling to build audience also, so it kind of works both ways. If you do end up deciding to go with a DIY self-distribution route, building audience early and often is critical. But even if you eventually end up plugging into the system, having audience already for your film gives you leverage. It makes your project much, much more attractive to distributors, to platforms. It'll get you more money, more attention, more power when your film is released. So it's pretty important no matter what. And again, because we're in this moment of massive upheaval, it's more important than it's ever been before. Filmmakers don't generally like to hear about audience building very much, which I understand, because you're like, I'm just trying to get my film made, or just trying to raise the money, or just trying to get through post-production, which I understand. I'm a filmmaker too. I've made films. I know what an uphill battle it is. And it can feel like I don't want to talk about audience building until later on, but it is so, so critical that you actually start early and at least start thinking about your audience early and who your audience is, because marketing is very, very hard right now. This is the distribution crisis is colliding with a marketing crisis, an advertising crisis in general, which is that it has never been more difficult or more expensive to market to people, because we're all being constantly bombarded all of the time with all of this images and information and sites and blah, blah, blah. And so for any one thing to break through is so hard. And the reason I say it's expensive is that it means that if you're doing traditional marketing in terms of just trying to reach as many people as possible, the number of times that you're going to have to pay for an ad to get in front of them is too expensive. It means that your film won't make any money, and that you may end up having to spend more in marketing than you spent on the film in the first place to get people to see it. So the way I think about audience building, when you ask most filmmakers, what is your audience? They'll give you some answer like, well, it's women 25 to 35 or whatever. And that kind of marketing just absolutely doesn't work anymore, because again, like, where are you going to find women 25 to 35? Also, that was always kind of a false category, because there's nothing that all women between the ages of 25 and 35 like. There's nothing. So the way to do it now is to try to break down way, way more specifically who your audience is, where they live, where they are, what they're reading, what they're doing, so that then you can plug directly into those pipelines. Because another thing the internet has done has really bifurcated us in terms of where we're paying attention online. So it's why a lot of these mainstream media publications have lost so many readers or viewers, because instead of us all reading the New York Times or us all watching whatever CNN, we've all gone down to these much smaller and more niche sources for all of our information, for all of our online communities, which is bad news in the sense that it's hard to reach a lot of people broadly. But again, that's why it's really important to get super specific, so that you don't need to reach the huge pipeline, which doesn't exist anymore. You need to find directly the pipeline of people who will connect with your project. So just as one example of this, with my second feature film, Bite Me, we realized that people who love Harry Potter were probably also going to love Bite Me. They weren't directly connected, although because we knew that, we did work really hard to get a Harry Potter cast member in Bite Me, which we did. But we just kind of worked out that our film is a film about people who feel outside, feel unseen, and who are desperate to be seen and accepted for who they are. And it just so happens that people who really love Harry Potter tend to be those kinds of people too. Now, we came up with this hypothesis and then we tested it, but it did prove to be true. So then we could direct our marketing at, okay, well, where do you find people who really love Harry Potter? In Harry Potter fan clubs, on Harry Potter forums, on Harry Potter Facebook pages. Now, that wasn't the only group we advertised to. We came up with these other groups, but that became a really, really important way to reach the audience that was also going to love Bite Me. So I'm going to put you through a little exercise now. You won't have time to do this during the video, but you can pause. I'm going to put it up on slides so that you can pause, go away, come back. This exercise will take a little time, and I would encourage you to do it with your whole team. If you can, if you have producers, a director, a writer, whatever you have in terms of your team, I would very much encourage you to do this together now. Wherever you are in the process of making your film, it doesn't matter. Even if you are still working on rewrites of the script, do this exercise with your team. Okay, we're gonna dive in. Let me share my screen. Little pause for tech fun. Da, 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 da. Ba, ba, ba. Okay, slideshow, play from start. We're in business. Okay, so I am going to have you think about audience avatars. And what I mean by this, you don't have to draw anything. But you want to imagine 3 audience avatars, meaning 3 human beings, whole distinct human beings who are going to make up your audience groups for this film. So for each of these 3 audience avatars, you want to think about a different segment of your audience. So don't make them all sort of the same. You want to make them as distinct as possible. Like, I think this person would like my film, this person, and this person. And if you're like, I have no idea what you're talking about, I don't know any segments of audience for my film, help. A good place to start is often just like your team. Who are the people on your team? They love this project, so maybe people like them would love this project too. That's actually how we got to the Harry Potter decoder for Bite Me. Or think about people in your life, specific real people who you know would love this movie. And if you know they would, maybe people like them would also love this movie. So you're gonna think, you're going to sketch out, not drawing, but writing and thinking 3 distinct human beings who would love your movie. And you're guessing, but make your best guesses for now. And really, in the way that you would draw out a character for your film, really try to get a sense of who this person is. What is their age? What is their gender? What is their profession? Where do they live? Who do they live with? You can name them, that's fun, and also useful when you're referring back to them. So really, like, pause the video and think of 3 distinct human beings. Then for each of those avatars, you're gonna think of 3 to 5 things that you think this person loves. Like loves, not likes, but loves. These things can be products, they can be activities, they can be content, they can be clubs, they can be hobbies, anything the person can love, it doesn't matter. But what are 3 to 5 things that this person loves so much that they will take action and seek out to get or participate in those things? Then for each audience avatar, you're going to write out, okay, if this person has free time, what do they do with it? What activities do they do? Do they seek out being with other people? If so, in what circumstances? Do they like to be alone? If so, what activities are they doing by themselves? Part 2 of this question is, if that person has extra money, what will they spend it on? I don't want you to limit yourself in terms of thinking about like, what will they spend it on related to film? For right now, just think about what are the things they will spend their extra money on? Is it clothes? Is it activities? Is it experiences? Is it travel? What are the things they will spend money on? Next, for each, this gets a little philosophical, but you're creative people, so I'm guessing you'll follow me here. So for each person, you're going to think about what is this person's core longing as a human being that they will take action to fulfill. So this can be anything, but each of us has these core longings that we're constantly doing behavior and taking actions to try to fill. So again, using Bite Me as an example, we worked out that for our audience, again, they feel like outsiders. So their core longing was to be seen in all of their complexity, and accepted and loved. So that's what the characters in the film are seeking. It turned out that that's also what our audiences were seeking. So then when we got to distribution, we were able to create an event around the film that specifically gave our audience members the opportunity to have that core longing fulfilled. Now, you may find that there is one core longing that's in common for all of your audience avatars, and you may not. It doesn't matter. But just for each of them, figure this out. Okay. Next part of the exercise. So once you've done that, you're going to start now thinking about, how do I connect these audience avatars to a marketing and distribution plan? And now you may be super early on in your process, right? So you may be like, lady, I can't think about what my marketing and distribution plan is. I'm still working on my script. It doesn't matter. You do have to start thinking about this. But you don't have to commit to anything, right? So we're not saying like, this is definitely going to be our marketing and distribution plan, but we want to start thinking about, okay, well, if we guess that these people are our audience avatars, how would they want to watch the film? How would we get the film to them? So that then, as you're going through this whole process, that you can be making decisions towards that goal and that strategy, versus just making the film and then you've got the film and then it's finished and then you're like, now what do we do with this movie? So you want to be thinking about this early. Okay, so the first question here is, how will each audience avatar want to watch your movie? This has two parts. The first part is literally, where do they want to watch it? Do they want to, is there a specific platform that these people watch things on? Is it Netflix? People who are on Netflix are different than people who are on Hulu, are different than people who are on Amazon, who are different than people who want to watch things on YouTube. Like, where does your audience want to watch content? Is it in a theater? Is it at home? Is it with other people? Is it alone? Get into this person's psychology. Where do they want to watch it? And you may not have this answer either. You may have to note at this point, okay, I got to go research where 25-year-olds are watching, 25-year-old men who love Harry Potter are watching content. You may have to go research that. That's fine. But for now, just make a guess. I can't emphasize how important this is. So I have a friend who made a film about a 65-year-old Latina woman. And this film made all of its money on like dish satellite TV, pay-per-view, something that for most films, it doesn't even show up on the profit sheet anymore. But that's where her audience, all of her audience was. She made almost no money anywhere else. So because that's where they're watching stuff. They're not watching stuff on these other platforms. So if she had not known that, she could have made this movie for which there was an audience, and that audience never would have found it, and that would have been a catastrophe for my friend. Don't do that. Find out where your audience is watching content. Part 2, is there some kind of event or add-on that will enhance their experience of the film? So something that will make them more likely to watch it, and or something that will enhance the impact that you are already trying to have with them on your film. So again, using Bite Me as an example, it's a film that's intended to make audiences feel joyful. And again, we wanted to give our audience this experience where they could come as themselves and all of their beautiful weirdness and be accepted. So we invited the audience to come in costume to the event. And then after every screening, we had a joyful vampire ball where you could be in costume, you could let your freak flag fly. And it was an event where it was like community building and everyone was accepted and everyone could be welcome. So it enhanced the experience that we were trying to create with the movie, but it also gave the audience what they were seeking. Okay, then you're going to brainstorm 3 to 5 specific ways that you can reach each audience avatar. So how does this person find out about content for each of them? There's probably channels that they're finding out about content all of the time. How can you plug into those channels that they're already looking at? And then what is the thing that makes them decide to actually watch a particular piece of content? Is it Are they susceptible to paid social media ads? Sorry, my timer went off. Are paid social media ads going to work for them? If so, what platforms are they on? Are there particular influencers who can get to them? Specific publications they're reading? Are there YouTube channels they're watching? Where can you find them where they are already looking? And how can you get your stuff and information about your film and advertising to your film onto those places where they are already looking? Okay, now make a plan. And again, I get how overwhelming this all can be, and I get that you may be really early in your process. I don't care. Still commit just 2 hours a month to make this work, to work on this stuff from today forward for the rest of the life of your project. And put it in your schedule, because this is going to be the easiest thing to just brush off your plate. Don't brush it off your plate. Commit to 2 hours every month working on this. As you've got your audience avatars and you're going to keep refining them, keep testing your hypothesis, seeing if you're right, coming up with new ideas, use them as the North Star for all of the thousands and millions of decisions you're going to have to make for your movie between now and the time that it's marketing. So for casting, budget, team, distribution, marketing, and everything in between, the thing you are asking yourself is, how will this thing help me get this film to those audience avatars? What will make it more attractive for them to watch? It doesn't matter about everybody else. It only matters about your audience. Second thing, part of your plan is you're going to begin sending out marketing test balloons with each new announcement and piece of content. So you're going to make spreadsheets for each of your audience avatars with the lists of YouTube channels they're on, influencers they're following, publications they're reading, whatever it is. And you're going to keep these lists going. And every time you have a cast announcement, or you have a production announcement, or you get a poster image, or any piece of content, certainly once you have your trailer, but you should be working on this long before then, you're going to send those things out to these channels and just see who bites back, see where the heat is coming. And maybe you realize, oh, our audience avatar 3 actually isn't interested in this. We're just going to focus over here. Continually test your hypotheses, hone, refine, test again, so that by the time your film comes out, you not only think you know who your audience is, you really know who your audience is, and you have data and receipts. And then finally, begin capturing your audience immediately. You must have an email sign up on a splash landing page website. You must have a newsletter where people can sign up to get information, and you can begin collecting people, because as you're doing these marketing test balloons, if somebody hears about your film and wants to see it, but you don't capture their information, you may never find them on the internet again. So you've got to begin capturing them. Email addresses are the best thing, because you can always get back in touch with them with an email address. Potentially, you also want to have 1 or 2 social media pages if there's a specific place where your audience hangs out, that they will watch it, but that's less necessary, at least in the early stages. That'll become more necessary as you move into real marketing, but get those email addresses. Social media algorithms change all the time. Platforms come in and out of vogue. If you have their email address, you can get back in touch with them. That is my presentation. I hope you come join our panel. Thank you for listening, and good luck.
Hi, I'm Leela Meadow-Connor, Executive Director of Film Festival Alliance. FFA is a nonprofit organization that serves film festivals and the people who run them. We provide networking and capacity building opportunities to our more than 200 members across North America and the UK. Welcome to our conversation about navigating the festival circuit. The world has certainly changed since we were originally slated to do this conversation in 2020, and we've invited the wonderful Katie McCullough of Festival Formula, our partner in the Filmmaker Lounge series, for a quick chat about 10 things we want all filmmakers to think about as they go forth and navigate this changed news circuit.
Hi, I'm Katie McCullough. I'm founder of Festival Formula, and we are a consultancy company that helps filmmakers navigate the worldwide circuit. So very welcome to be here. Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks, Katie. So I'm going to ask you a few burning questions that we've been hearing from filmmakers, and I'll throw in a little festival perspective here and there. So let's start off. with the top 10 things we want filmmakers to know as they navigate the circuit in 2021. What do you think, Katie? Should filmmakers hold off or submit away?
I think it's going to depend on the film. So, for example, shorts are a little bit more nimble. They can kind of navigate the circuit a lot easier. With features, you might have a little bit more process to consider, like do you have sales agent or distributor involved? But I would say actually the festival is still throwing up massive opportunities for filmmakers, even during a pandemic.
I would agree with you, and I think the festival circuit will continue to thrive this year, and we'll see some changes maybe as some festivals go back to the hybrid model in the fall, if possible. What about premiere status? Has that changed because of the virtual festival?
I do think that some festivals are being more flexible on premiere status due to, the whole circuit being kind of affected by it. I think you'll find that some festivals will not budge, and they generally tend to be those kind of premiere-led festivals, the tastemakers, the big guns essentially. But we have found that festivals have been less precious about premiere status, and that's to help the festivals, but also the filmmaker in question as well.
I agree. And from a festival perspective, I think a lot of the regional festivals, even the larger regional festivals, aren't so concerned with premiere status anymore. What should filmmakers keep in mind when it comes to accessibility, which is very important in the virtual space?
Absolutely. So 100%, we always advise filmmakers to have a time-coded dialogue list for their films before they head onto the circuit. This can help a number of things. It can help create subtitles, but also closed captioning as well. We have seen an increase in festivals being aware of a more accessible audience, which I think is a really good silver lining from the situation. And that has often included in translation for hard of hearing audience. So I always recommend kind of creating subtitles and closed captioning.
Absolutely. And I want to just throw in there that consider that your film might be playing at a drive-in theater this summer or fall, and consider how big your captions are and what color they are for those audiences. Katie, tell us what you think about this. I have thoughts.
I have many thoughts. Fee waivers are something that some festivals can give and they can provide. Others don't, and that is their kind of bottom line. They want it to be an equal playing field across the board. I will say that if a festival offers an alum discount, they generally kind of put it up front in their T's and C's. It's on their submission page or on their website. What I will say is a lot of festivals have actually factored in the financial difficulties a lot of filmmakers have been experiencing, and have either kind of reduced their submission fees or offered discounts that are there kind of, for everyone to grab, or actually held fast and not increased their submission fees through the deadline. So fee waivers are a tricky one because if you are going to ask for it, you kind of have to have a reason, not just to try and get everything for free. That's what I would say.
And I would add to filmmakers from a festival perspective, it's best not to copy and paste an email because you can see that copy and paste. It's best to do your research, make sure that that festival that you're asking a fee waiver for even has submission fees. And really, craft your email in a personal way where you're explaining to the festival why you think your film would be a good fit there. Katie, can you get more eyeballs on your film in a virtual space?
100% yes. This is down to a number of things. It's because there is not a restriction on, the locale of a festival. It exists in an online space, which means that naturally people's audiences are increasing, and that might be from even different communities, from regional festival goers that maybe didn't realize a festival happened on their doorstep, but also kind of friends, family, maybe people that aren't in the industry, which is kind of the good kind of audience that you want, really, what we call a pure audience. I think as well, like, you have more opportunities to reach a wider audience online. That's because there are no limitations on time restriction. But also, we have seen festivals say they've had a massive increase in streaming views because of people not being able to physically be present at a festival before, whether that's due to locale, maybe they can't get a ride into the festival, but also accessibility, kind of going back to that again as well, where a lot of venues that festivals used were just not applicable for everyone. But also just the opportunity for people to experiment and try something that they haven't seen before, which has really, really kind of helped audiences grow. And, now it's for film festivals that have acquired this new audience to sustain them and keep them.
Yeah, we've seen an increase in audiences across festivals, from regional festivals to Sundance. And you also have to consider that when somebody's watching a movie at home, there might be more than one person watching at the same time. So the number that people tend to use is a 2.7 factor. So what are some ways that filmmakers can be assured that their films are safe online?
So I would say our experience is that the majority of festivals are always engaging with a filmmaker from the beginning of the submission process in terms of what they can offer in security. I would say that a lot of festivals are doing everything they can to make sure that filmmakers feel comfortable and that the films are being screened securely. It will vary very differently from the size of the festival or perhaps, the locale of the festival, but it kind of breaks down into the most common factors of behind a paywall. It's not just put online somewhere that the whole world can see it. It is behind a paywall, and that paywall might not necessarily come with a cost, but you have to become a subscriber or get an access pass. The other thing is, more common with features is to put a cap on how many views that film can be seen. And that's to kind of make sure that the film isn't being overexposed. That can also keep sales agents and distributors a bit happy when it comes to kind of how much the film is seen. But I would say, like every festival that we've dealt with, it has always been putting security up front. And that is the one key thing that I think filmmakers are really appreciative of, but also film festivals are always thinking of as well.
And some festivals use geo-blocking as well, so that those films
Yes.
are only available in their region, and that's a way to also contain the audience. How can filmmakers use their experience on the virtual circuit to bolster their careers?
So I really like these kind of questions, because the way that we kind of paraphrase it is, if you were not in the middle of a pandemic landscape with the festivals, you probably wouldn't be able to attend every single screening that your film had. So the best way is to think of it like this: you've actually gained an opportunity in that a lot of festivals are offering Q&As to filmmakers, no matter where they are in the world. But also, you've still been curated. You still had a selection from a festival, and that is something you can utilize for your conversations. Maybe seeking representation, or if you want to, try and talk to an exec producer for the next project. Those laurels that you collect from a festival, they're a stamp of approval. Then they are something that, you didn't have to be physically present for it to happen. It still happened. So we always say to filmmakers that the festival circuit is still there to provide you with something, and it's still doing that.
Absolutely. And as we can see by the amazing success that festivals have had in 2020 and now 2021, having your film on the virtual circuit is pretty much the same as the physical in terms of your career. Katie, what are the best ways to network when you can't be with other folks in person?
First of all, I would say if a festival offers you the opportunity to be part of a panel or do a Q&A, jump on it, absolutely jump on it. So as I said earlier, you have the opportunity now to be part of a Q&A, when previously, that kind of privilege was only given if you were present at the festival. And I would say festivals that maybe didn't have Q&As previously or an industry section are actually introducing it because of the accessibility to everyone online. I think the brilliance of the situation that we're in is that you still have the opportunity to talk to your other selected delegates. You have the opportunity to listen into masterclasses and take part in networking events that, whilst it's not the same as being in person face to face, if anything, the feedback that we've received is that it's more fruitful, because you are being more selective with who you talk to, and you're having more dynamic conversations because you're having to, have a designated time or kind of meet in a particular spot. So I think the opportunity is still there. You do have to change your kind of way of thinking, because it's not the same as walking into a bar with a drink and just seeing who's there. You still have to be a little bit more proactive, but it's still there for the taking. Absolutely.
I think that this year we'll see more of those filmmaker engagement opportunities. I think last year folks were really concerned with how do we put this festival online in the films, and now we're going to be seeing more opportunities for filmmakers to have those networking moments together. How can filmmakers better promote their films in a virtual format?
Well, first things first, make sure you follow the festival that you've been selected at on every possible viable platform. Festivals love being tagged and love being shouted out because you sent your film to them to be selected, and they have selected your film out of the rest of the submissions. So it's a two-way street. They're going to be shouting out about your film, but that doesn't stop you from shouting about your film at their festival. I would say make sure you know when your film's screening, know if there is any kind of geo restriction, so you can kind of be aware of who you're promoting it to. But the key thing is just to be active about it and actually kind of engage with the other filmmakers that have been selected. It's a community, and our community is online at the best of times before a pandemic anyway. So, really lean into that. They're filmmakers that have been selected alongside you, and it's a good opportunity to kind of extend that community you have.
And I would say to the filmmakers, if there's someone on your team who's handling all the socials, and you can make a media kit and send it to the festivals, or at least with suggested copy, things that they can copy and paste, it's very helpful for the marketing people at the festival, because they're trying to market many, many films, and to have that at the ready is really very useful. Katie, finally, is the festival circuit still active enough?
Yes, definitely. I think everyone presumed the worst last year, but I think if anything, 2020 has proved how resilient the circuit is, how innovative that the festivals can be. And I think it's kind of shaken off a lot of dust from some festivals and kind of made others kind of step up their game. So it's been a massive kind of increase in activity for both filmmakers and festivals. And like I say, every festival is going to be different, and every filmmaker experience is going to be different. But the main thing to take away is that there's still an experience to be had. And I think everyone should be fully aware of how brilliant the festivals have succeeded in very troubling times.
And I think there are a lot of similarities between the independent filmmaker and the festival organizer. We are a scrappy lot, and we get things done. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Katie. And we wish all of you filmmakers the best journeys with your films for this year and beyond. The festival circuit is alive and kicking, and we hope 2022 sees us all back together in person, enjoying your films in the theater with one another.
Thanks again for joining us for the 90-Minute Film School at South by Southwest 2021. Next year, I really hope to be in Austin with you all in much fairer weather than I'm currently experiencing here in New England, and eating migas and drinking really good beer and mingling and hearing live music. And yeah, I don't know if I've sold you on being there in person yet. But so for now, I just wanted to leave you all with some resources as you continue your exploration on these topics. So let's start. Fundraising. If you're looking for grant funding for your project, No Film School put out a really comprehensive list of grants late last year. And some of these grants have suspended their cycle because of COVID. Some have added additional grants. So whatever you knew a year ago, the landscape has changed significantly since March of 2020. And I recommend researching grants that may be relevant to your subject or your identity as a maker, such as the Trailblazer grant that is hosted by the Transgender Film Center, founded by Sav Rogers, who you just heard from in this session. Also heard from Emily Best, who is the CEO and founder of Seed and Spark, which is a crowdfunding platform, but so much more. They have a wealth of resources on their site, as she alluded to in her talk. So anybody who is interested in crowdfunding for their film, that's a good place to start. So production. Let's start with documentary. Special place in my heart. Field Division commissions, creates, and supports original short form and feature length nonfiction films and episodic series about developing and ongoing stories around the globe. They also offer a free legal clinic that they just announced at Sundance this year. You can sign up for that on their website. Doc NYC is an annual documentary festival that supports filmmakers with educational, networking, and promotional opportunities throughout the year. I highly recommend looking up Doc NYC Pro. They have a whole host of conversations that you can access for a fee. I think it started last month and it's still sort of going on. And then the International Documentary Association is a funder, a programmer of educational content and screening series. They host a conference, also the IDA Documentary Awards, and they're also the publisher of Documentary Magazine. These are all excellent resources for documentary filmmakers, and a lot of them have free content. And then for both narrative and documentary, we'll start with the Sundance Institute. Some of you have heard about the Sundance Film Festival. There is also a whole nother organization that runs the festival and all sorts of other programs. It's a nonprofit organization dedicated to the discovery and development of independent artists and audiences. Through its programs, the Institute seeks to discover, support, and inspire independent film, media, and theater artists from the United States and around the world, and to introduce audiences to their new work. And then there's also the Gotham Film and Media Institute, which is formerly the Independent Filmmaker Project, or you may have heard of the IFP. It's a nonprofit dedicated to finding, developing, and celebrating the people and projects that shape the future of story. Distribution. So POV, which stands for point of view. It's the longest running showcase for independent nonfiction films and is hosted on PBS. They have a whole rundown of digital platforms for filmmakers. So if you want to look at these platforms side by side and sort of compare them, that's a good place to start. And then the Film Collaborative is a distributor that also has a wealth of complementary resources on their website that they call the Distropedia. Exhibition. And this is where I am mainly, is in the world of exhibition. So if you want to learn more about film festivals, I recommend Chris Holland's book and blog of the same name, Film Festival Secrets. There's a whole database of festivals that have no fee to enter. Then there's a wealth of articles that help you think about, how to navigate the festival circuit with your film. And then the Film Festival Alliance is a nonprofit organization serving film festivals and the people who run them. And Film Festival Formula is a company dedicated to helping filmmakers with their festival strategy. And you just heard from both of those executive directors, Leila Meadow-Connor and Katie McCullough. And they host a Filmmaker Lounge series, a candid conversation between festival directors and programmers and also filmmakers. So this is by no means a comprehensive list of organizations that can help you on your journey, but it's an excellent place to start. I will also say that there are organizations that are dedicated to supporting female filmmakers, such as Film Fatales, and they have chapters all over the world. Organizations for BIPOC filmmakers, such as Firelight Media, queer filmmakers, such as Outfest and Frameline, and disabled filmmakers, such as Forward Doc. And then I also encourage you all to check out the Radical Film Network, which is a whole constellation of resources for organizations dedicated to social justice work. So that's it. I hope that you'll join us after the festival for a live conversation where we can share more resources and navigate this ever-changing world of filmmaking and audience building together. This will be taking place on Monday, March 22nd at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, and you can register at seedandspark.com/events. So thank you all and good night.